Step away from the register. We need to speak with you about your employment authorization.
I work here. I've worked here for 6 years. What is this about?
Are you a U.S. citizen?
Yes, I was born here. Why are you asking me this in front of customers?
This girl's helped me every week for years. Leave her alone.
Ma'am, this doesn't concern you.
You go through corporate HR. You do not interrogate employees
Sir,
on the
step
floor.
aside.
Wednesday, August 3:17 in the afternoon. A Milwaukee grocery store, mid-afternoon rush. Seniors taking advantage of discount day. Parents stocking up before school starts. Carts rolling, registers beeping, the ordinary soundtrack of an ordinary American afternoon. At Register 7, a 29-year-old woman named Lakeisha Monroe is helping an elderly customer count out cash for her groceries. Lakeisha smiles at her, tells her there's no rush. She's been doing this for 6 years. She knows most of these customers by name. They know her. This is her place. This is her life. And then, 2 men in tactical vests marked ICE walk through the automatic doors. They don't browse the aisles. They don't pick up a basket. They scan the checkout area with practiced, deliberate eyes, moving from register to register, until their gaze settles. They walk directly to Register 7. What happens over the next 23 minutes will be captured on high-definition security cameras from every angle. It will air on local news that same night. It will trend on social media. It will be shown in law school classrooms. And it will become the cornerstone of an $8.4 million federal lawsuit. But right now, Lakeisha Monroe doesn't know any of that. Right now, she's just a woman at her register, watching 2 federal agents walk toward her, and feeling something cold and sharp settle in her chest. Today we are going deep into one of the most documented, most consequential civil rights cases to come out of a worksite enforcement operation in recent years. This is the full story. Every minute of it. From Register 7 to the federal courtroom, and everything in between. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because I promise you, the way this story ends is going to stay with you. Let's go. Before we get to the agents, before we get to the courtroom, before we get to the $8.4 million, you need to know who Lakeisha Monroe is. Because this story only hits the way it should hit if you understand exactly who was standing at that register. Lakeisha Monroe was born at Hennepin County Medical Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She grew up in a middle-class neighborhood on the north side. Her mother, Sandra Monroe, was a school nurse. Her father, Curtis Monroe, was a union electrician. The kind of parents who raise their kids to work hard, respect authority, stay out of trouble, and believe that if you do the right things will come back to you. Lakeisha was a good student. Not valedictorian, not scholarship material, but solid. She played volleyball in high school. She graduated. She had plans, the way young people do, vague, hopeful plans about college and careers and making something of herself. But scholarship money didn't materialize, and Lakeisha wasn't willing to take on crushing debt for a degree she wasn't sure about. So instead of going to a 4-year university, she made a practical decision. Her aunt lived in Milwaukee. There was an opportunity there. So she moved. She was 23 years old. She got a job at Riverside Market, a large regional grocery chain serving a diverse urban neighborhood in Milwaukee. Wide aisles. Weekly sales flyers. The kind of store that's the anchor of a community. She started as a bagger. Over the next 6 years, she worked her way up. Bagger to cashier. Cashier to senior cashier. Senior cashier to front-end supervisor candidate. She was reliable. She was friendly. Customers came through her line on purpose, because she remembered their names, asked about their kids, never made anyone feel rushed. She paid taxes. She voted. She had her own apartment, a savings account, a retirement fund through her employer. She was taking community college classes at night, paying for them out of pocket, a few credits at a time. She was, in every legal and practical sense, exactly what she said she was, an ordinary American building an ordinary life. And at 1 p.m. on that Wednesday in August, she clocked in for her afternoon shift like she had hundreds of times before. She had no idea that by 3:17 p.m., her life would be divided into before and after. The IC agents who walked into Riverside Market that afternoon were conducting what their agency would later call a routine worksite enforcement operation. The reason for the visit? An anonymous tip. Someone had called in a claim that the store employed undocumented workers. The tip was vague. No names. No specific individuals. No credible identifying information. Just a call. And apparently, that was enough. 2 agents in tactical gear marked with IC in large block letters entered the store and moved straight to the checkout area. There were 15 employees working that shift. 15 people visible on the security footage, going about their jobs. The agents looked at all of them. And they walked to Register 7. The first agent stepped up beside Kesha's station, while she was still in the middle of a transaction. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to step away from the register." Kesha looked up. The elderly customer in front of her looked confused. The 5 people in line behind her went quiet. "I'm sorry, what?" "I'm in the middle of ringing up a customer." "Step away from the register now. We need to speak with you about your employment authorization." Every eye in the checkout area turned toward Register 7. 3 other cashiers at nearby stations stopped scanning. Customers pulled out phones. Kesha felt her face flush. Her hands froze over the cash drawer. "My employment? I work here. I've worked here for 6 years. What is this about?" The second agent had quietly positioned himself on the other side of the register, boxing her in. 2 men. 1 woman. In front of everyone she worked with. In front of everyone she served every day. "Are you a U.S. citizen?" That question. Those 5 words. Kesha would later say it felt like a slap. She knew what was happening. She'd seen it on the news. She'd heard stories from people she knew. But she had never, not for 1 second, imagined it could happen to her. At her job. At her register. "Yes. Yes. I'm from Minnesota. I was born in Minneapolis. Why are you asking me this in front of customers?" "We'll need to see documentation proving your citizenship and legal right to work. Come with us." The elderly woman Kesha had been helping spoke up. Her voice was shaking. "Young man, this girl has helped me every week for years. She works here. Leave her alone." The agent didn't even look at her. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. Please complete your transaction at another register. I'm not leaving until you explain what you're doing to her." The crowd was growing. The line at Register 7 had abandoned their carts. Maybe 30 people, customers and employees, were now gathered in a semicircle, some filming on their phones, others just watching with expressions of shock, discomfort, and anger. And then Kesha's manager showed up. Alan Patterson had been managing Riverside Market for 12 years. He was the kind of manager who knew every employee's name, their schedule, their kids' birthdays. He came rushing over from the customer service desk, and when he saw what was happening at Register 7, his face went red. "What is going on here? Are you the manager?" "Yes. Alan Patterson. I manage this store." "What is this about?" "We're investigating employment eligibility. We need to verify your employees are legally authorized to work. You're doing this in the middle of the store, during business hours, in front of customers. If you have questions about employment authorization, you go through corporate HR. You do not interrogate employees on the floor. Sir, we're conducting a lawful investigation. You can cooperate, or face charges of harboring undocumented workers." Harboring. That word hit Alan like a punch. Harboring? Kesha has worked here for 6 years. She is a documented employee. We have her I-9 forms on file. We have her direct deposit information. Everything went through proper channels when she was hired. The agent turned back to Kesha. "Ma'am, do you have identification on you right now?" Kesha's purse was in her employee locker in the break room. "My wallet is in my locker. I can go get it." "Stay where you are." "What form of ID do you have?" "My driver's license." "My employee ID." "I have a social security card at home." "A birth certificate." "I have everything." I'm from Minnesota. We'll need to verify that. You'll need to come with us to answer additional questions. Alan stepped between Lakesha and the agents. No. Absolutely not. You want to verify employment? You contact our corporate office. You submit formal requests. You do not detain employees during their shift. Step aside, sir. This is federal business. I don't care whose business it is. You are harassing my employee. At this point, one of the customers who had been filming pushed closer to the agents. He was a man named Marcus Chin, and as it turned out, he was an employment discrimination attorney. Excuse me, agents, I'm a lawyer. What is your probable cause for detaining this woman? The second agent, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. We're conducting a worksite enforcement operation. We have the right to verify employment eligibility. Worksite enforcement requires advance notice to the employer and proper protocols. You cannot just walk into a store and start interrogating random employees. What specific information do you have suggesting this woman is unauthorized to work? That's confidential. Confidential. Marcus's jaw tightened. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a business card, and held it out to Lakesha. Ma'am, don't answer any more questions without representation present. These agents are violating proper procedure. Sir, you are interfering with a federal investigation. Step back. I am witnessing a potential civil rights violation. I am staying right here. The confrontation was escalating. Alan had gotten Riverside Market's corporate legal team on the phone. Employees were recording from every angle. The elderly woman who had been at Lakesha's register was on her own phone, calling local news stations. And through all of it, Lakesha Monroe stood behind Register 7, her hands gripping the counter, trying to understand how going to work had turned into this nightmare. Then the first agent spoke again. And this time, his tone was final. We are taking you into custody. You will be transported to a federal facility where your citizenship and employment authorization can be properly verified. You cannot do that. Alan was practically shouting. She is a United States citizen. She has rights. She has the right to prove her status. Until then, she is being detained as part of an employment verification investigation. The agent reached for Lakesha's arm. She instinctively pulled back, not aggressively, just a reflexive flinch from a stranger grabbing her without warning. Don't touch me. I didn't do anything. Someone called the police. Call someone. We are federal agents. We have authority here. Marcus tried once more. Ma'am, you do not have to go with them without a warrant. They are bluffing about their authority. You have the right to refuse. But Lakesha wasn't a lawyer. She was a grocery store cashier who had been raised to respect authority, to comply, to not make waves. And she was terrified. I'll go, she said quietly. I'll go. Just please, don't handcuff me. Please. Not in front of everyone. That is your right. I don't want to make this worse. I just want this to be over. I'll go prove I'm a citizen and then I'll come back. Right? That's how this works. The agent nodded. If your documentation checks out, you'll be released. It was a lie. Or at minimum, it was misleading enough to constitute one. Lakesha Monroe was walked out of Riverside Market without handcuffs, but flanked by 2 federal agents, one on each side, like a person under arrest. Alan Patterson followed them to the parking lot, still on the phone with corporate, still arguing. Customers poured out of the store behind them, filming everything. Some were crying. Others were shaking their heads. An entire community watching one of their own being taken away. The agents put Lakesha in the back of an unmarked sedan. Through the window, she could see Alan gesturing frantically. She could see employees with their hands over their mouths. She could see the elderly woman who'd been her customer, standing on the sidewalk, watching. The car pulled away. And Lakesha Monroe, born in Minneapolis, educated in American public schools, employed and tax-paying and completely, utterly innocent, was taken into federal custody. The facility was 40 minutes away. She was processed like any person accused of being in the country illegally. Fingerprinted. Photographed. Her belongings inventoried. Her cell phone was taken. Her Riverside Market employee ID badge was noted, and then dismissed as insufficient proof of citizenship. I need to call someone. My manager knows I'm a citizen. My family can bring documents. You'll be allowed a call once processing is complete. Processing took 6 hours. By the time Kesha was finally allowed access to a phone, it was after 10 o'clock at night. She called her mother. Sandra Monroe answered on the first ring. Kesha, honey, where are you? Your manager called hours ago saying you'd been taken by federal agents. What is happening? And Kesha, who had held herself together through the confrontation at the register, through the walk across the parking lot, through the fingerprinting and the photographs, and the 6 hours of waiting, broke down completely. Through tears, she told her mother everything. The agents at her register. The questions about her citizenship. The detention. The fact that they still wouldn't believe she was who she said she was. Where are you? What facility? I don't know. Somewhere outside Milwaukee. Mom, they think I'm not a citizen. They won't listen. Baby, listen to me. You were born at Hennepin County Medical Center. I have your birth certificate. Your father and I are getting in the car right now. We will bring everything. Birth certificate, social security card, school records, everything. You hold on, baby. We're coming. But it wasn't that simple. The facility wouldn't allow family members to walk in with documents. Everything had to go through official channels. Verification requests submitted to state vital statistics offices. Database checks. Bureaucratic processes that moved at glacial speed, while real people sat in detention cells wondering if anyone would ever believe them. Meanwhile, back in Milwaukee, the story was already exploding. The security footage from Riverside Market had been obtained by local news. Corporate released it immediately, knowing it would vindicate their employee. It aired on the 10 o'clock broadcast, high-definition video showing federal agents confronting a cashier during her shift, ignoring the manager's protests, detaining a young black woman despite her repeated explanations that she was born in the United States. Marcus Chin, the lawyer who had tried to intervene, gave an interview. What we witnessed today was racial profiling disguised as worksite enforcement. Those agents had no probable cause to single out that young woman. They saw a black woman and assumed she might be undocumented. That is not law enforcement. That is prejudice with a badge. Social media erupted. #JusticeForKesha started trending nationally. Civil rights organizations issued statements. The Grocery Workers Union condemned the detention. The footage, clear, comprehensive, showing a frightened woman being treated like a criminal at her own cash register, was shared hundreds of thousands of times. And Kesha spent the night in a detention cell. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. She kept replaying the moment at her register, wondering what she could have said differently. What she could have done to make them believe her. Her cellmate was a woman from Honduras who'd been in detention for 7 months, waiting for deportation proceedings. They didn't share a language. But they shared a look, the particular exhaustion of people who understand that this system was not built with them in mind. Thursday morning. Curtis and Sandra Monroe had driven through the night from Minneapolis, 4.5 hours, arriving at the federal facility at 6 in the morning with a folder stuffed with documents. Birth certificate with the official Minnesota state seal. Social security card. High school diploma. Vaccination records from childhood. They were not allowed to see their daughter. They were told to submit the documents to processing and wait for verification. Verification? Curtis Monroe's voice filled the waiting area. My daughter was born in Minnesota. Here is her birth certificate with the official state seal. What else do you need to verify? Sir, all documents must be authenticated through proper channels. Proper channels. She's been here since yesterday afternoon. You have her on a hold for being unauthorized when she was born in this country. This is unlawful detention. Security was called. Curtis and Sandra Monroe were escorted out of the building, still clutching their daughter's documents, still demanding to see her. They went straight to Marcus Chin's law office. He had left his business card with Kesha before she was taken. Sandra had Googled him overnight. He agreed to take the case immediately, and when he looked at the folder the Monroes brought, he didn't hesitate. "This is exactly the kind of overreach we've been warning about. Your daughter is a United States citizen. She has committed no crime. She is being held in federal detention based solely on the suspicion of agents who have provided no probable cause for their initial approach." That same afternoon, Marcus filed an emergency writ of habeas corpus, one of the oldest and most fundamental legal protections in American law. A demand to the court: show cause why this person is being held. Justify the detention. Or let her go. The filing was a legal document, and a story all at once. It included affidavits from Alan Patterson describing Kesha's 6-year employment history, statements from coworkers, testimony from customers who had witnessed the detention, stills from the security footage, her birth certificate, social security card, and multiple forms of ID, proving beyond any possible doubt that she was exactly who she had told those agents she was. The federal judge who received the filing reviewed it that evening. Her name was Judge Catherine Erickson. She had been on the bench for 18 years. She had seen immigration enforcement cases of every variety. This one, she later said, stood out immediately. Friday morning. Emergency hearing. Judge Erickson looked down from the bench at the government attorney and did not look patient. The petitioner was born in Minneapolis. She has a valid United States birth certificate. She has been employed at the same establishment for 6 years. She has no criminal record. She was detained from her workplace without a warrant, without probable cause, and without any articulable suspicion beyond the agent's subjective assessment. On what grounds is she still in custody? The government attorney fumbled. Your Honor, the agents were conducting routine worksite enforcement. Routine. Judge Erickson repeated the words slowly. I have reviewed the surveillance footage. Those agents walked directly to one specific cashier out of 15 employees working that shift. They demanded citizenship papers in front of customers. They ignored the store manager's attempts to provide employment records. They detained a United States citizen for... She checked her notes. 41 hours and counting. What part of that is routine? There was no good answer. Because there wasn't one. Judge Erickson ordered Kesha's immediate release. Not in 24 hours. Not pending further review. Immediate. The petitioner is a United States citizen detained without cause. Her continued detention is unlawful. She is to be released within 2 hours of this order, with all personal belongings returned, and with transportation provided back to Milwaukee at government expense. At 1:30 in the afternoon on Friday, 50 hours after being taken from Register 7, Kesha Monroe walked out of the federal detention facility. Her parents were waiting. Marcus Chin was there. A crowd of supporters who had driven from Milwaukee were there. And multiple news cameras were there. She still had on her work uniform. The Riverside Market polo shirt and khaki pants she'd put on Wednesday morning. Her braids were disheveled from 2 nights of fitful sleep on a detention center cot. She looked exhausted. She looked traumatized. She looked like someone who had been through something that should never have happened. Sandra Monroe wrapped her daughter in her arms and didn't let go for a full minute. Curtis stood behind them, his hand on Kesha's shoulder, his jaw tight, holding back everything that had been building since that phone call in the waiting room. Marcus stepped to the microphones. Kesha Monroe is a United States citizen who was unlawfully detained from her workplace, held in federal custody for 50 hours, and denied her basic constitutional rights. We are filing a lawsuit to ensure this never happens to anyone else. 2 months later, the lawsuit was filed. And it was comprehensive. It named the 2 IC agents individually. Their supervisors. The regional IC director. The Department of Homeland Security. It alleged violations of the 4th Amendment, unlawful seizure without probable cause. The 5th Amendment, deprivation of liberty without due process. And the 14th Amendment, racial discrimination in enforcement. The security footage was Exhibit A, 23 minutes of high-definition video from multiple angles showing every moment of what happened at Register 7. The footage was, as the lawsuit described it, devastating. A peaceful workplace disrupted. A frightened employee interrogated. Customers trying to intervene. Agents refusing to follow their own protocols. Expert witnesses were called. Constitutional scholars testified that the 50-hour hold without charge, without access to counsel, and without proper verification, despite documentation being available within 12 hours of the detention, constituted clear deprivation of liberty. Employment law experts testified about the chilling effect the detention had on the entire workplace. 3 employees quit immediately after the incident. Multiple employees of color requested transfers to back-of-house positions where they'd be less visible. Customer complaints flooded in from people who no longer felt safe shopping there. And there was statistical analysis. Data showing that ICE worksite enforcement disproportionately targeted businesses with high percentages of black and brown employees, that individual detentions during such raids overwhelmingly involved people of color, and that in jurisdictions like Milwaukee, citizens of color were questioned about their immigration status at rates far exceeding their share of the population. Discovery was devastating for the government's case. When pressed about why they had approached Kesha specifically, out of 15 employees working that afternoon, the agents could not produce a coherent answer. She fit a general description we were looking for. What description? The tipster mentioned young female employees. There were 7 young female employees working that afternoon, all visible on the security footage. Why did you approach only Ms. Monroe? Silence. Was it because Ms. Monroe is black? Race had nothing to do with our decision. Then what criteria did you use to single her out? More silence. The pattern was undeniable. Every answer, every document, every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. The agents had seen a black woman working a cashier's job and decided, on no evidence whatsoever, that she might be undocumented. They had acted on that assumption, without probable cause, without evidence, without anything beyond racial profiling. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury watched the security footage repeatedly. Kesha at her register, helping the elderly woman. The agents approaching without explanation. Her increasingly desperate explanations. I was born in Minneapolis. My mother is a school nurse. My father is a union electrician. I went to South High School. And the agents responding, we need official documentation, not stories. They heard Kesha testify. I was born in Minneapolis. I have lived in this country my entire life. I have never broken a law. I have worked hard, paid my taxes, done everything right. And I got treated like a criminal because 2 agents looked at me and decided I looked illegal. That is not justice. That is racism. She said it with her voice steady and her hands trembling on the witness stand. And the jury heard every word. The agents testified in their own defense. But under cross-examination, their explanations crumbled. They could not explain their probable cause. They could not justify bypassing the store's management and corporate HR channels. They could not account for why verifying Kesha's citizenship took 50 hours when her birth certificate had been available within 12 hours of her detention. Their supervisor testified that the agents had followed standard ICE protocols. But when the actual protocols were put in front of the jury, protocols requiring coordination with employers, specific targeting based on credible information, and rapid verification of citizenship claims, it became clear that those protocols had not been followed at all. The jury deliberated for 8 hours over 2 days. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Liable for unlawful seizure and detention. Liable for racial discrimination in enforcement. Liable for violation of due process rights. Liable for intentional infliction of emotional distress. Compensatory damages, $2.1 million, for the detention, the trauma, the lost wages, and the ongoing psychological treatment Kesha required. Punitive damages, $6.3 million, to send a message about the true cost of racial profiling. Total verdict, $8.4 million. The verdict made national headlines. The 2 agents were terminated. Their supervisor was demoted. The regional IC director faced an internal review that resulted in reassignment. And the Department of Homeland Security implemented new enforcement protocols, requiring documented probable cause before any worksite detention, mandatory verification of citizenship within 12 hours for anyone claiming U.S. citizenship, and supervisor approval for any detention lasting longer than 6 hours. Those reforms don't fix everything. They don't undo what happened to Kesha Monroe. They don't erase the 50 hours she spent in a detention cell for the crime of being a black woman at her cash register. But they represent something real: accountability. The kind of accountability that might make the next set of agents think twice before walking past 14 other employees to approach the one black woman in the checkout area. Kesha used part of her settlement to pay off the student loans she'd been accumulating from night classes at community college. She bought her parents a new car, to replace the aging sedan they'd driven through the night to bring her birth certificate to a facility that wouldn't let them inside. And she donated to organizations supporting detained immigrants who don't have her resources, her citizenship status, or her story's visibility. For months after the verdict, she went back to Register 7. Her therapist had encouraged her to take more time. Alan had offered to place her anywhere else in the store, back office, customer service, anywhere she'd feel comfortable. But Kesha chose Register 7. They don't get to take my job from me. They don't get to make me afraid of the place I've worked for 6 years. Her first day back, customers lined up specifically at her register. Some brought flowers. Others brought cards. Many just wanted to tell her they'd been following her case, that they were outraged, that they were glad she was back. The elderly woman from that Wednesday afternoon came through with a framed photo of Kesha from one of the news reports. The note on the back read, "You stood up for all of us. Thank you for your courage." Kesha has since been promoted to front-end supervisor, and then to assistant store manager. She speaks at union events and community forums about workers' rights. She works with immigrant rights organizations, understanding that her citizenship status gave her protections that many people in her situation don't have. 3 years after the incident at Register 7, Kesha Monroe was invited to speak at a national conference on immigration enforcement reform. She stood before a room full of advocates, attorneys, and policymakers. And this is what she said. "I was lucky. I had my birth certificate. I had parents who could drive through the night to help me. I had a lawyer who took my case on the spot. I had a judge who recognized the violation immediately. But most people don't have all of that. Most people who get detained don't have the resources to fight back. My case made headlines because I'm a citizen and the violation was so clear. But every day, people who look like me get questioned, detained, treated like they don't belong, and we need to change that." The room erupted in applause. But she wasn't done. "Those agents looked at me at my register and decided I looked illegal. Not because I was doing anything wrong. Not because they had evidence. But because in their minds, a black woman working a minimum wage job must be an immigrant. That assumption cost them $8 million. But more importantly, it cost me my sense of safety. It cost me the belief that working hard and following the rules would protect me. It taught me that being born here isn't always enough if you don't look the way people think Americans should look. So I'm asking you, all of you working on these issues, to remember that behind every case, every statistic, every enforcement action, there are real people. People like me who just want to go to work, do their jobs, and come home safely. People who deserve to be treated like the citizens they are. People whose rights matter as much as anyone else's." There it is. The full story of Kesha Monroe. From Register 7 to the federal courtroom. From 50 hours in a detention cell to an $8.4 million verdict. From a frightened cashier being told her life story wasn't enough proof, to an assistant store manager standing in front of a national audience, demanding that this country do better. She didn't ask to be a symbol. She just went to work one Wednesday afternoon. But when the moment came, she stood her ground, quietly, tearfully, without handcuffs, in front of everyone she'd served for 6 years, and she made sure the cameras caught every second. And the cameras did. If this story moved you, If it made you think about what enforcement should actually look like in this country, share this video. Leave a comment. Tell me, what would you do if an agent walked up to your register and demanded to know if you're a citizen? Because that's not a hypothetical for a lot of people. It's a Wednesday afternoon. I'll see you in the next one.